it's devastating. It's just to see everyone who's worked so hard in the garage to be in Italy for the first Italian race for me, Ferrari, and not make it to Q3. It's definitely bittersweet. Tough one. I mean, I feel super gutted, devastated that we weren't able to get through. I really feel like we've made so many positive steps through the weekend. The car was generally feeling better. We had better, and the brakes were better today. The balance was really nice, and in Q2, run one felt decent. And then when we put the new tires on, for some reason, just didn't have any more grip. Couldn't go any faster.
Is it possible that a 7-time world champion be eliminated in Q2 in their home debut with Ferrari? What exactly failed in the Hamilton classification in Imola, and why this result could mark a break point in its relationship with the Scuderia? The Imola circuit, that temple of the speed loaded with mysticism for Ferrari, was the perfect place to see the awakening of this new pair. Everything was prepared. The team at home, the tifosi present en masse, and the British pilot ready to demonstrate that it still has the ability to make differences. But what happened in the classification was a devastating blow to the Scuderia. Neither of the two red cars went to Q3. Charles Leclerc was out of thousands. Hamilton, behind him, did not even be able to place himself in the top 10. Both eliminated in Q2. The wound was deep. The data is more than anecdotal. It is the first time in more than a decade that Ferrari does not place a single car in the top 10 in Imola. And it was not for a sudden rain, nor by an inopportune red flag. It was purely and plainly due to lack of rhythm. What hurts most is that it was at home, in front of his audience, in front of fans who expected a new dawn. What they witnessed was a gray cloud wrapping the most emblematic team of motoring. And for Hamilton, who hoped to use this race as an emotional trampoline with his new team, the classification ended up being a reminder of how steep it is the mountain that must climb with Ferrari. While the situation could be partially explained by the lack of adaptation of Hamilton to the SF25, the truth is that the problem is structural. It is not a poorly taken curve or a return aborted by traffic. It is a car that still does not offer tools to fight on equal terms. And when the car does not respond, not even a champion with 7 titles can compensate for the deficit. That is the crudeness of Formula One modern. Talent is vital, but the car remains the element that defines the margins. In Imola, the SF25 made it clear that these margins are still far from what the elite demands. Lewis Hamilton did not leave the classification with the head down or empty excuses. On the contrary, he spoke frankly, recognizing that he felt advances in the car, even some improvement with respect to previous sessions. And that is the most disconcerting, because according to him, the car behaved better. He commented that the brakes had improved, that the balance of the car was positive, that the sensations were more consistent with what they expected. But despite that perceived improvement, the performance on the track said something else. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Are we facing real progress or before a necessary self-deception to maintain high morals? It is not easy for a pilot of his caliber to face weekends where he cannot even fight for a top 10. Hamilton has built his legacy on the basis of excellence. He knows what it is to get a maximum of a car, even when things are not going well. That is why their words after the classification do not sound to consuelo, they sound to contain frustration. He said textually, "I constantly repeat myself. There is not enough performance in this car at this time." That does not say a pilot who gives up. A champion says that he is crashing again and again against an invisible wall that prevents him from moving forward. The problem becomes more delicate when even the pilot perceives that steps have been taken, but the results are still poor. That generates a mismatch between internal expectations and the harsh external reality. Because if the car has really improved but still is not enough to be in the fight, then Ferrari's technical roof is much lower than was thought. And that lights all the alarms inside Maranello. Because it is not the same to have a momentary problem than knowing that you are at the limit of the potential and still is not enough. Hamilton knows it, and that's why he insists on his message. You have to improve. He doesn't ask for miracles, he doesn't expect magic. But it demands evolution. Because otherwise, the project in Ferrari can quickly become a frustrating journey. What was lived in Imola was not an accident. It was the reflection of a car that, despite the good specific feelings, can still not support the hopes of its star pilot. And that is a very serious symptom for a team that promised to be on top and today struggles to survive in the middle of the table. One of the most critical points of the weekend for Lewis Hamilton in Imola was the brake system of the SF25. From the first practice sessions, both he and Charles Leclerc expressed their disagreement. Hamilton expressed it bluntly on the radio, These damn brakes are a problem. It was not a superficial complaint, but a clear sign that something essential in the behavior of the car was completely out of place. For a pilot who needs total confidence by attacking the braking, especially in a path as technical as Imola, this is a serious problem. And what aggravates the situation is that, according to Hamilton, this was not a recurring problem in previous careers. It was something new. Something that should not be facing these heights of the season. The contrast with practice 1 was alarming. In that initial session, Hamilton felt comfortable. He assured that the car had taken a step forward, that it felt positive with the performance. But as the weekend advanced, everything changed. What seemed like technical progress vanished. And that generates even more uncertainty within the team. What happened between one session and another? What changed in the configuration of the car that made it unstable, unpredictable, and so difficult to drive? These are questions that are surely being analyzed in Maranello with magnifying glass, because the answer is not evident and the consequences are worrisome. When talking about defective brakes in a modern Formula One, it is not simply that the car does not stop. It is how it affects the general balance of the car. A bad response in the braking compromises the entry into curve, lateral support, and exit. All car behavior is altered. And that forces the pilot to modify his constant driving style, which causes a loss of confidence that translates into mediocre times, even when the car seems competitive in other aspects. In a sport where the tenths separate the glory from oblivion, that is a sentence. Hamilton's frustration does not come from a bad day. It comes from the feeling of being in a project that still fails to offer you a stable platform to compete. The statements he offered after the classification were hard, but realistic. They speak of a pilot who is putting everything on his part, who tries to adapt, that he even praises small improvements, but that he cannot hide his disappointment when the car does not respond in the key moments. And in Imola, with all the emotional weight of running in Ferrari's house, that disappointment felt stronger than ever. Because there not only the technique failed, the promise of something better failed. What happened in the classification of the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix is not just another bad result in the Ferrari statistics sheet. It is a clear sign that the team is going through a structural crisis that not even the arrival of Lewis Hamilton has been able to solve. Being eliminated in Q2 in a circuit as symbolic as Imola represents much more than a sports disappointment. It is a direct blow to the morale of the team, a raw reminder that the most historical team of Formula One still does not find the right technical course. And for Hamilton, this represents a difficult reality to accept at a stage of his career where there is no margin for experiments. The pair between Hamilton and Leclerc was outlined as one of the most powerful of the year. Two fast, aggressive, and hungry pilots. But when neither of them can put the car in the top 10 of a classification, the problem is clearly elsewhere. And that lack of competitiveness has a chain effect. It affects the confidence of the team, the mood of the pilots, and complicates every technical decision on weekends. For a team like Ferrari, who promised to fight for the championship from the first race, these results begin to sow doubts even within their own ranks. For Hamilton, this start of the season is being more challenging than expected. He arrived in Maranello with the illusion of starting a new chapter full of glory, but he has found a project that is still under construction, and whose foundations seem more fragile than expected. Adapting to a new team is already complicated on its own. Doing it while the car does not respond to your needs, it is even more. And although your talent and experience can be an advantage in long-term development, it is also true that time does not play in your favor. Ferrari's immediate future depends largely on his ability to react quickly. It is not just about bringing aerodynamic improvements or checking the brakes. It is about completely redefining the technical philosophy of the car, of understanding why simulations do not coincide with the actual performance on the track, and offer their pilots a competitive package, even on specific tracks. If that does not happen soon, the project with Hamilton runs the risk of becoming another failed experiment in Ferrari's long list of attempts to return to the top. The Imola classification may have been just a Saturday session, but its impact will be felt for much longer. Because when a world champion can't even enter Q3, it's time to rethink everything. Lewis Hamilton did not need more than a couple of statements to summarize the seriousness of the situation. The car does not have the potential it should have. It is not an opinion, it is a diagnosis. And he expressed it with the clarity of someone who has been at the top and recognizes when a project is not up to it. The classification in Imola was not simply a bad day. It was the public demonstration of an internal crisis that Ferrari has been dragging for a long time. The difference is that there is now a figure like Hamilton in the center of the storm, and that changes everything. The big question is how much margin this project has before it begins to crumble. because the results matter, but perception also matters. And today, the perception is that Ferrari is once again far from the objectives that had been set. Hamilton arrived to win, not to rebuild. And although he has recognized the commitment and patience, his history indicates that he is not a pilot who asks fighting for points. If the situation does not improve soon, the speech inside and outside the team could change dramatically. This scenario opens many unknowns. Is Ferrari ready to make the structural changes you need? Can Hamilton lead a technical transformation from within, or will end frustrated like other big names before him? And how long will the honeymoon last before the pressure and the docked expectations begin to generate internal tensions? These are questions that still have no answer, but that become increasingly urgent as weekends accumulate without real results. And now I ask you, do you think Hamilton can reverse the situation with Ferrari, or are we seeing the beginning of another failed chapter in the recent history of the team? Leave it to the comments.